game and as a product, and he actually just sold it to Radial for, I'm sure, a ton of money. But it's a box that, you know, you basically you take the line level in, and then you've got a trim knob, and it knocks it down to instrument level so that you can plug it into an amp, and then you have a dry guitar signal. The world is your oyster.
Oh, and you can then manipulate it to your own liking. They're not doing it in the live setting.
And the cool thing about it is when you record that way, you get the performance even though you're not getting the sound that you had originally. So you can still do something with the performance that you originally saw in the studio.
You don't need a reamp. I mean, it's great to have one, but you can just use a DI if that's what you got.
Okay.
Yeah, you can use a DI. It works great. That one thing about some of the more advanced reamp boxes, like I think Radio has actually a drag control, so you can actually load the pickups differently, not just a level change, but an impedance load, so you can get a little more accurate thing. Just dropping the level coming out of a computer is not necessarily going to work exactly the same as the way the load between your amp head and the pickups, the impedance of those two interacting. So I think Radio has a drag control on theirs where you can kind of adjust how that's working. Have you played with that? You've got the fanciest freaking Radio thing.
You got the whole radio rack or something?
JD7.
Yeah. Little labs makes some, Radio makes some.
Yeah.
$20. They're not expensive to build.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, reamp is, it's kind of funny when
Because you're only paying for the transformer essentially, and whatever you put it in.
Which is a comment on the DI thing I was gonna say earlier. Like, if you read what it costs, like a Jensen transformer is like the most expensive one is $120.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and if you know what a DI is, it's the wires to a jack. So if you're an audio engineer, save yourself a lot of money on fixing your own cables and get a soldering iron, even the like Joe Schmo one from Radio Shack, and make a DI, put 6 of them in a box, and you'll be in hog heaven for a while, like just figuring out what the difference between those DIs are, and they're cheap. I mean,
yeah, if you go to the Jensen, is it Jensen.com or?
Yeah, they have all the schematics.
Yeah, you can Google Jensen DI schematic or something, and it'll tell you how to make one, or you can find it probably YouTube. Somebody's probably done it by now, or Instructables or something.
If you have a really hard time your first time, it might take you 2 hours. Like it's not hard.
Yeah. On the mix end of, we haven't gotten into real amps yet, but for modeling, because this is a big deal, because it's coming up everywhere. I get a lot of tracks to mix that are, there's a lot that goes on with modeling, you know, that have, you have options now of cabs, and not only with amplitude and those things, you actually have miking placement and miking choices. That was one of the things for me, is getting in a mix, is getting some air, you know. I don't always want that 57 in eating the grill sound, you know. Some cool things that I've come across would be, if you're going to use amplitude or pod or something like that, even if you're using the same amp, if you're getting just a really direct sound, I hear a lot of that, which is really cool for some classic in-your-face kind of rock things, but sometimes you want a bluesier thing. I've had pretty good luck with duplicating that track and using one of the amps, a lot more of their room mic or something like that in amplitude. One of them's direct, so it's almost like you have your 57 up front. I'm always simulating something that wasn't there, and you can just do it with room reverb or whatever, but have a darker cab on the mic that's a little further away because maybe it's a little darker, or you wanted to use a ribbon in the room and then the 57 up close. This stuff is really cool when you duplicate those two and listen to those options and try to pretend you had a room mic. It can really spread that guitar a lot more realistically than just throwing a 30-millisecond delay or something on that and spreading it wide. It's really, really cool. And you can even low pass that second mic and really get that kind of room mic like I had the thing over here. Has anybody tried that?
Well, this is kind of a little bit different, but it's kind of like what you're saying, where I feel like it's too like up front in the mix. It's too just like in your face. The mic's like sitting right here. I just on mine, I just dial back the mic and listen to it, and then wherever it like sounds best in the mix, that's where I stop. So if it's like 6 inches or 2 feet or wherever, and the other thing is like just like a little touch of reverb, so just a little touch will just knock it back.
Yep.
So it's like, you know, two in your face. But I don't think I have room mic options on my sim, so
Yep.
not an option.
I recently got a track in the mix that was just a Vox Tone Lab direct, and it was almost like the cab sim was off, so I used like a recabinet or something, amp sim, just a cab sim, and ended up doing that duplicate. And that's pretty cool when you don't have mic options, is to duplicate that track, do a low pass with room reverb really super short on just that second track, so it sounds like the mic was further back in the room, so you still got your dry guy over here, and you don't have a mic option on the software. You know, just create the ambience on that duplicate of the track, so that it sounds like there's just a little bit of room, and it makes a huge difference in how wide the guitar is. I wish Adam was here, because he was actually there with that thing, but it's pretty cool. If anybody wants to try it and tell me they hate it later, that'd be awesome.
For making all these decisions without muting or soloing tracks is huge too, because guitar tone
Yep.
is like so basic to rock that it sounds obvious, but make the decision with the track on.
Make a decision with the track on. That's a big deal. Sounds good by itself, sounds lame in the track. What are you gonna say?
I would like to represent left field on this one.
Okay.
My two favorite, like, really weirdo distortion processing for guitars currently are Isotope Trash, which lets you really do multi-band distortion design and like
Love
nuts and
that.
bolts a little more than modeling things that really exist.
Yeah.
And then for even more left field, the Force Preditone.
Mm-hmm.
You know that thing?
I haven't used that yet. I use some of their other stuff though, but I've heard good
Yeah.
things about that for that reason too.
It's weird and they're French, but
Who was it? Craig Anderton had a multi-band distortion thing that was really cool. I don't think they make that anymore. It was like something fuzz, but you could distort specific bands only, and that's super fly. Similar thing to the
yeah, Trash does that, and Preditone is multi-band too. But Trash lets you put two distortions per band, two different distortion types per band, which is pretty flexible.
cool.
In addition to, like, you know, amp modeling and then
Yeah.
all their other crazy nonsense.
That's what, isn't Trash like, I thought that was like marketed initially as for being for vocals, mostly.
I have no idea what it was marketed for.
I think it was just marketed as a
It's just
distortion in general.
You know, I mean, I'm a big fan of distortions of all flavors, and I don't know. I'd love to know what everybody else uses, but I mean, you know, there's like guitar rig and there's amplitude for sort of traditional guitar type effects and regular things that really exist, and there's the weirdo design your own from scratch type stuff like Trash and Preditone.
Yeah.
The DeFi stuff is alright. I don't know. Like, I
It's
just always
freaky.
seem to come back to it. It's I forget which one is it. DeFi or Lo-Fi? I can't remember.
Yeah,
Lo-Fi.
Rectify.
Yeah, all those. They I don't like just a little bit sometimes. Just in the way that it holds up when you put it back in the mix. It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Who makes them?
It's like
Digi.
I keep coming back to Digi
They're
plugins.
yeah, they've been around.
Traveling around, you
That plugin.
can't be sure of what you're gonna have. I guess it's one of those things.
Don't be afraid to mic this. Take a amplitude or whatever, and throw a mic in your control room or whatever, and crank your monitors to don't kill them. But throw up a mic and record that track. And the thing about that is trying to get the phase to a point where you like it, because there's maybe some comb filtering at specific frequencies.
Or tone distortion is like
Yeah.
it's common, man.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be afraid to mic a fake guitar thing with a speaker, you know. Throw up your vocal mic or 57 or something somewhere away. Your speakers are usually full range unless you're using R-tones or something. So, you know, where you place it, you don't want to just hit the tweeter or the woofer or something. Find a good spot. And I've done that a lot with drums and everything else. If there's no air there, you can do it with reverb, or if you got a cool room, just re-mic it. Reamp the fake amp. Electric guitar, regular electric guitar with those old things. Oh, there's some back there. They're amplifiers. Guitar amps, the real ones. Tips and tricks comes to mind.
Front and back miking, putting the phase on the back.
All rough axes.
Ribbon mics.
Love
Ribbon
'em.
mics rule for me.
Love them.
Like distance in the room, you mean, or like on?
No,
close?
right on it.
Yeah.
Like 101, which is like $800,
Yeah,
I
so-
think. That gets a little too grainy if you move it too far away, like the top end starts to really trail off as compared to the Royer 121. But ribbon mics, maybe a combination of 57, 421 off, off the cone. But also sometimes like when I'm doing guitar overdubs with people, we've done the initial meat and potatoes tracks, and then we'll do the distant mic guitar tracks to add like depth, or we'll put the amp over here and the mic over there and just go to town, like really random stuff. Just okay, yeah, the amp, that looks good there. Okay, throw the mic over there, and which mic? Oh, this mic, whatever mic you can grab, and then just crank down some compression on it so this room just comes alive into the mic, and high pass it, and it just adds this like whole, like if you're listening to the mix, it just adds this like thing off in the distance, and it's got such a character to it, and it will, not just this room, but any room, anybody's room. So to have a smaller room that I worked out of, and that always really did the track justice when you just, instead of relying on stock things, the presets, the digital things, just like trying to capture the character of rooms you're in.
That's a good point though, if you've got two mics on an amp, not, sometimes it's cool to just compress the room mic, to bring up more room than was actually there in the mic, That's pretty cool. Same thing for drums too, just compress one thing and you get a lot more head space. Yeah, a compressor on drums.
Sometimes I just like to run guitar pedals directly into the the DI input on the front of a preamp and just get that dry, distorted, tube screamer straight into a preamp.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool. Or sometimes just plugging the guitar in and then just turning up the preamp, the mic preamp, until it distorts. That has some interesting characters.
Isn't that how the Beatles did all their albums?
I don't know.
I mean,
but I have the book, so I'll find out.
that book.
That brings up a good point though, because I'm a fan of that. Again, tracks are cheap, is splitting a DI and printing a dry signal in case you want to reamp or there's some issue with the mic or whatever can go wrong. The trick is when to split your signal. So if you're recording guitar at home, if you're going through an amp sim, then you're already going in DI. But if you're recording an amplifier or something, do you do a lot of that, splitting to record a dry track with your amp tracks?
I just take a DI.
That's what I mean.
At the source, yeah. Guitar into the DI.
Right, and one to the amp and one to your, yeah, exactly. What about pedals and things?
Not usually. I just get like what the player wants to commit to, and then the DI.
Great.
And here's a case in point. I had anybody know who Mike Stern is? Mike Stern was here, and he comes in. He's got two Fender Twins. He's got a Yamaha. Yamaha makes the SPX 90, right?
Yeah.
Right. SPX 90. He has a delay pedal, so guitar into the delay pedal, which then feeds the SPX 90, which has some kind of like, I don't know, some phase thing, and then he splits that signal with two amps.
Right.
And he was like, oh, you could just do the delay in Pro Tools. And I was like, my gut told me like, no, we should just use your delay. But I was like, okay, this is Mike Stern. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. Give it a try. 15 minutes later, we're both like, nah. He's like, I'll just use the pedals. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
You just use the pedal. But that's like, I'm always a fan of like just respecting the guitar player's thing. If they have a ton of, even if they have a ton of effects, I just say, let's go with what you have planned, because like you said it earlier tonight, there's no plugins sometimes, or the big studio doesn't necessarily have something that trumps the guitar player's cool pedal.
FC2 fuzz box.
They've spent a lot of time getting that down, so for me it's like get it dry and then get it through the amp.
Yeah, the studio's not always the best place to be writing. If you're dealing with paying clients and all that stuff, I tend to keep my mouth shut when people are like, yeah, let's just use your stuff. I mean, I try to, but as much as I can, I'm always like, man, you do your thing. We'll worry about that later, but you just do you, I'll do me, and we'll all meet in the middle, because like later on at 2 o'clock in the morning when the guitar player went home and the vocalist